Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat. I'm Jose Otero, and this is IGN's Nintendo Show. Joining me this week are Brian Altano, Schneider,
Guten Tag,
and Zach Ryan.
What's up?
So, coming up on Nintendo Voice Chat, this is our year in review show for Nintendo. 2016 can be described as an awkward year, but we're going to be talking about software, we're going to be talking about hardware, we're going to be talking about Nintendo's mobile, how they expanded the brand, and this all-in experiment they had for E3, which you're probably tired of hearing about, but we should talk about. But it seems like the consistent message for 2016 was, we're not ready to talk about NX yet. Of course, NX being the code name for what we now know as Nintendo Switch.
Sure.
Let's start this discussion on software. This was sort of a strange year because you had games like Fire Emblem Fates at the early part of the year, which were really smart. But then you had games like Metroid Prime Federation Force, which were not as smart, unfortunately. So let's look at it.
When you're talking software in 2016, I just want like a smash cut to just like a lone tumbleweed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
no, that's not true.
3DS still had a bunch of really good titles.
It was an awesome
right?
year for
like
3DS.
Fire Emblem was good.
Yeah.
We had even like smaller games like Picross were really good. But I would say for Wii U, it was not the best of times and the worst of times. Like even the great games were, like Twilight Princess were a re-release.
Yeah.
And then games like Paper Mario, Star Fox were good, but they all came with a little asterisk. It's like, it's good, but it's not what you wanted, right?
Sure.
Like each one of those games on the Wii U felt like a slow year and off year. There was no like new Zelda, no new Mario, no new big title to really play.
Yeah, whereas 3DS had fun experiments like Box Boy, or you liked Phoenix Wright Spirit of Justice. That's not an experiment, but
Pokemon,
Pocket Card
Picross
Jockey.
Pocket Card Jockey was a good
Picross 3D, Rhythm Heaven Mega Mix, which was a game I didn't think would come out here and was one of my favorites. It's sad that Wii U didn't have those.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I mean, I think a few years ago we sort of realized what the Wii U was going to become. We kind of understood like this is not going to take over the sales charts. This is not going to dominate. This is not going to be the best Nintendo console ever made. But it's going to have some hits consistently. And I think this was a year where it was sort of just like, oh man, they really are focusing on the next thing. They're not being abrupt about it and they're not being vocal about it, but they're very clearly like, well, you get a Zelda port, you get a pretty safe Paper Mario, and you get this kind of all over the place Star Fox, which some people like more than others. I wasn't really crazy about.
It was all right.
Yeah, I think it's like I'm at the point now where my Wii U will always be a system that sits next to the other systems. It would if it was the only system you own this year. Man,
it was a bummer. Yeah.
Rough year.
Well, it depended definitely on what you were looking for, but you did have like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which was a solid JRPG as well. Yeah. You had Star Fox Guard, which was a more clever, I think, game than Star Fox Zero ended up wanting to be. You had also Pokken Tournament, which was part of this. That's one success story definitely to talk about, was that Pokemon's 20th in 2016 was a really good thing. It was very well executed for the most part. I mean, you had a pair of Virtual Console releases. By the way, the only two Game Boy games released on Virtual Console on 3DS in 2016
were those two?
Were Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue.
You know who
Nothing else on the Game Boy.
You know who felt that sting the most? This is me. I bought every Game Boy game to come to 3DS because they were like $2.99 each.
Yeah.
And I love having just like this Virtual Console library of Game Boy games. I'm on an airplane and I have like a huge library of Game Boy games, and they just stopped coming. Same with the NES games. Like
I don't think there was a single NES game released on 3DS Virtual Console. But meanwhile, when you look over at Wii U, funny thing that happened was, you weren't getting a lot of boxed retail big games. You ended up getting over 50 Virtual Console games. Like, this is all just basic like Wikipedia scrapes. So we're still like sort of sifting through the data, but I think the final number was 54.
Yeah,
and
Pokemon
some of them
Snap
were
just launched today.
Yeah,
like,
just launched
weird.
today.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So if you wanted the older games that you knew, you definitely got those on Wii U, but you didn't get a lot of new games, which was sort of the thing.
Yeah, and even the VC, like, I feel like this year was so odd because, like, a year ago we got games like Mario Kart that were high quality and basically said, you know what, second screen, we realize it's not the big advantage, right? Like, let's move away from it. Smash Brothers, these games moved away from using that screen. And then this last year 2016 was all about like, well, let's cram in a couple second screen features with Paper Mario.
Yeah.
And with Star Fox, and I thought for both franchises that was actually the weak part. Yeah. And then Virtual Console was all over the place, as you said. 2 Game Boy games, and then it was all Super NES basically, right?
On 3DS, on Wii U, you had like Zero Mission,
Yeah.
you had Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, you had I mean, the Drill Dozer, which is one of my favorite Game Freak games like ever made, showed up this year. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that I didn't play that's on this list.
But if you looked at like just pattern and you're trying to figure out what was Nintendo's strategy with Virtual Console, like I can't come up with one other than let's hold back NES games because we got the NES Classic coming or something like that.
Yeah,
At least that's the situation on 3DS. On Wii U, there were actually a lot of NES games put out there. Adventures of Bayou Billy, Dig Dug 2, but that's getting too into the weeds. I think you are right though that you did see sort of this retreat from that second screen and what it can do, even though they pegged everything on Star Fox because they announced Star Fox when they still, I mean, for a lack of a better way to say it, they announced it when they cared, when they still really were trying to rally and support that system, and it ended up being what it was.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the things Nintendo did this year were sort of like halfway there, you know, and maybe they're growing, maybe they're building, Pokemon being the exception, because I really think that like the way that all came together was sort of this magical synergistic zeitgeist of I've never seen this many people so exceptionally triumphant about a franchise at once. We didn't really hear a lot about the 3DS, and then the Pokemon games came to 3DS and shattered records for that franchise, which is like they're kind of quiet, and all of a sudden they're like, "Here we are! Remember us? We're killing it. We're awesome with this."
We were here when that Direct came on that they announced that they were bringing the original Pokemon games to 3DS, and I remember there was a handful of people in the office that were just losing their minds,
screaming and crying.
Red, blue, and yellow on 3DS.
Yeah, and other games on 3DS definitely worth mentioning. Kirby Planet Robobot, probably
Brian's
my
favorite game of the year.
Yeah, that was my favorite Kirby game I think ever. Like I don't think
such a great game. I really love Robobot.
Yeah, you had Dragon Quest VII finally also came out here. That was from 2013, I believe, in Japan. It was when they got that game. That thing finally made its way here.
Coming next year.
Yep. Mega Man Legacy Collection showed up, although Legacy you have all the Mega Mans by then. But this was worth it, right?
This is the. I feel like it's the third time that they've packaged these Mega Man games together in a collection and put it out. But this Legacy Collection went above and beyond. Like it's a really, really great collection of Mega Man games.
It's awesome.
And I was kind of surprised, and I'm sure we'll get to this later. But I was really surprised that only Mega Man 2 was on the NES Classic. Yeah. And maybe it's in part because of this Legacy Collection.
Probably, and Capcom looking at that. No, but Pokemon Sun and Moon, which we haven't talked about, but we've said a lot of things about. There was another one on here that I did want to throw attention to, and I just lost my place. Oh, Mario Maker for 3DS. Here comes the caveat games, right? The ones that you were like, man, when Mario Maker got announced, there were some folks who were like, I absolutely want this on 3DS. Why don't I have it? Well, you got one that was a good port in terms of making stages, but it wasn't in terms of sharing stages. And that was was sort of the mess up on that game, the mistake.
Or in really kind of selling you on what's unique about the 3DS, and like, you know, whereas Smash Brothers, which came out at the same time, had kind of like a nod to the fact that it was on a handheld system with like some unique elements in it, and then replicated the experience to a T. This was more kind of like the light edition that came out later, and then that was a bummer. It's a filler.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and I think we're going to see the same thing with Yoshi's Woolly World, which is sort of like a kind of drag and drop game if they're taking something from the Wii U and putting it somewhere where people haven't played it or will play more of it, which is interesting because I'm wondering how that's going to like sort of work into their strategy of we're seeing a lot of ports being announced or rumored for the Switch. If they're double dipping on 3DS already, how much of the value is going to be there for Mario?
Well, so far
Mario
the ones
Maker.
we know about though are games that aren't on 3DS, right? Like the Mario Kart 8 port sounds to be like, or at least seems to be a Wii U game and not being put on 3DS. Same thing with Splatoon. Splatoon's not a 3DS game.
But I think something like Mario Maker, had they just like kind of stepped away from the 3DS entirely and brought it back for the Wii U or the Switch, yeah, I think there would have been like this whole sort of
well, it's like Jose was just mentioning Mario Kart, but in that now you got me doing it in the Switch reveal trailer. We saw Mario Kart, but we saw it with variations, right? So it looks like maybe it's like Mario Kart 8 Plus or something like that. And that's the kind of iterative thing that I'd like to see with something like a Mario Maker. It doesn't necessarily need to be an entirely new game, but give me Mario Maker on the Switch with 4 or 5 absolutely necessary upgrades to it, and I'm more than willing to pay full price to play that
but
again.
instead we got Mario Maker Minus.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
like which is it's taking a game and stripping away features.
I wouldn't call it minus. I would say lesser than or equal to.
Okay. All right. I hope so. I hope some time elapses now though between this release and then Mario Maker on the Switch. I feel like
I agree.
one big thing they have to do now with Switch is tell people that it's not a 3DS, it's not a Wii U, and
that's
so
the thing.
already we're seeing kind of upgraded ports. I think that's a little worrisome.
I think
we're definitely veering away from 2016, so I do want to drive you guys back. You can finish that point, though.
I just wanted to say that I think that means that we'll see Mario Maker 2, and we'll see Yoshi's Woolly World 2 or whatever the next Yoshi sequel will be on Switch, as opposed to a juiced up port.
Or Zelda Maker.
Yeah, but then finally, like to kind of finish off that point about Virtual Console and 3DS suffering, like it wasn't just that those, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, and Yellow, by the way, were the only 3 games that you can get on every 3DS.
Right.
Everything else, at least that I've been able to track, was a Super Nintendo game, and the only place you got that game for 3DS Virtual Console was new Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah, right.
And that strange choice of just saying, hey, this is where we put these now.
If you look at the times that they really celebrated and eventized a Virtual Console thing, you look at the NES Classic Mini, and you look at the Pokemon games, when they launched, there was a big sort of like fanfare about that. Oh, yeah. They really just sort of like owned the fact that this is a big triumph in retro gaming. You grew up with this, you'll love it. Half of the other times you find out about these games is you get an email from Nintendo on Thursday morning, and at the bottom in a little whimper, it's like, oh, and also Balloon Fight. And then you just go on with your day. I think like if they really
Nobody's that excited to play Balloon Fight.
No one is. But I think if they really leaned into the fact that like there is a great sort of nostalgia for these things, and they made events out of them, people would look forward to them.
Well, they did with we're going to get to it, but NES Classic is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's
better
exactly
or worse.
Well,
and
what's
I think
what's the idea that maybe they saved a lot of that retro reverie for the NES Classic? You know what I mean? Like obviously Pokemon was packaged into the Pokemon 20th anniversary celebration, right? They wanted to make a big year-long event out of it, and I think they were very successful in that. But then we also get, regardless of the releases that you're talking about on Super Nintendo, you get a game like Earthbound, which is one of the greatest RPGs ever made, coming to Virtual Console this year, and was
on
relatively
3DS.
on 3DS, and was relatively like less celebrated. It was like, also we're throwing in Earthbound in there.
Well, like we just worked PSX, and the way Sony handled sort of franchises like Crash Bandicoot and Parappa, big huge things. They've got characters walking around the show floor. Obviously, Nintendo doesn't have its own convention, but even like Windjammers got a part of it, and like that's a retro game. I think Nintendo has infinitely better retro games than Windjammers for the most
Absolutely,
part.
but I do think that the situation of 3DS Virtual Console drying up, I don't know if it was a symptom of the NES Classic. Like I see it as more. I see it as more of, it may have been the games worth releasing we've done. I mean, think about it for a second. This system has been out for 5+ years now.
Yeah.
Like, at what point do you
I don't know, but
run out of licenses?
Again, look at the 3DS releases, though. You have a list that is like, you have one page of Super NES releases, and like I'm not complaining about getting like some of these great games, right? Like Final Fight.
I'm only talking about the NES part of this. I'm not talking about the wider.
But
what you're talking
I
about,
do feel like it's conspicuously absent. Like we can find more NES games to release if they wanted to take a more balanced approach.
Do people care? Like not everyone cares about some of those, and maybe we're getting into the weeds on this one, but I feel like if they did run out, that's fine. Or if you're throwing that attention towards getting Virtual Console right on Switch, that sounds like a more believable reason to me than we didn't know what to do.
I mean, I think even like having like 1 or 2 new Virtual Console games a week across all of their platforms and making a big celebration out of them, like cutting their own trailers for them, putting them on their YouTube page.
Hey, it's Urban Champion again.
Or bringing back the original commercials.
Totally.
That'd be awesome. Like do that kind of stuff. It definitely was an afterthought, and maybe the sales on the Virtual Console games weren't that good anymore, so it didn't warrant that much of a push. And we should be thankful that we still got those games.
And also, I mean, regardless of what the Virtual Console space looked like, it was such a strong year for the 3DS. Maybe they didn't necessarily need to devote so much time to Virtual Console releases this year.
So just to round out software, because we got to move on to hardware. DLC-wise, we started the year off with Corrin and Bayonetta DLC and Smash Brothers, and that's strong to me, right? You're finishing off with...
I can't believe that was this year.
That was this
feels like a lifetime ago.
February of this year. You got that for Wii U and 3DS.
And those Amiibo are great.
Yeah. Well, they haven't put those out yet. I see what you did there. Still no sign of Corrin. Yeah, the watch started from that moment on. Win or
I cannot believe that. That's not done yet.
I will when they announce the Switch port and they show you both figures. I mean, we know the Bayonetta one's getting made.
We've seen pictures of it, right?
It takes a very long time to make a little plastic toy.
That's true.
Or you want to whittle it down from an even bigger plastic.
She has so much hair.
So you got to promote it with a game. So Fire Emblem Fates had additional campaigns that you can download, and there were battle maps, whether you cared or not. Super Mario Maker continued to get support, and you had a super expert mode added to the 100 Mario challenge. You had thwomps and skewers and keys and all kinds of stuff in March. And then from there, you had an Animal Crossing update that no one expected.
Yeah.
That was
pulled
so
some
cool.
folks
Yeah, it was a
back
nice
in,
surprise.
like
Yeah.
hardcore, and others not as much. Like if you pair, you definitely didn't like it because you moved on.
I didn't like it.
Oh, you totally did not like it.
Oh,
We've
it's,
gone through this.
I was thankful for a free update, but I'm like, I don't know. I need a reason for everything. I need to understand the universe, and like it just didn't make sense to me. Like if a mobile game had come out at the same time, I'm like,
and that's maybe what they
Of
wanted.
course.
But when we get to
Maybe.
mobile, things definitely went differently. So,
But you brought up, I mean, DLC wise, like Fire Emblem Fates was such an interesting game to me in that they released 3 campaigns basically at the same time. Like I would have expected something like Conquest to follow 6 months in, like when we're all done with the 2 big
Sure.
campaigns. It's not like there wasn't enough Fire Emblem to play, but instead
Right.
they're just like
Take
they
it
put it
all.
all out at once, which was pretty crazy, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder if that was a matter of them wanting to move that team onto something else immediately, and the audience was sort of
Fire
just
Emblem
like,
Switch.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, say that. Like, how excited
that's
would we have?
absolutely- or the
How
mobile game.
excited would we have been if, like, later in the summer, you would have gotten a 3rd campaign to Fire Emblem?
Sure.
Right?
That would have
Yeah.
been really awesome. Yeah, that would have been a really smart move.
yeah. Not that this didn't work out though, right?
No,
Because
no.
it definitely was a lot to play. So then let's transition over to hardware.
Let's do it.
So we had Amiibo. We had a Shovel Knight Amiibo come out at the beginning
was
of the
this
year.
year?
That was
Yeah.
this year.
I love that
January
favorite Amiibo.
8th.
Me too.
Yeah.
We had a new Splatoon wave, a Kirby wave, a Super Mario second wave of the Super Mario series, and a 30th anniversary Zelda line, which
Yeah,
eventually
which are
came to the
awesome.
forefront. There was a Breath of the Wild set announced, but that game's not out, so we don't have that,
Yep.
and we're sad.
all
But
worth it for
Amiibo
Boo.
continued to move forward and continue to be presented as part of the Nintendo software experience, despite them not finding the best ways to utilize them yet, because that's something we've debated constantly on this show.
Yeah. I mean, I bought a few Amiibo this year. I haven't scanned an Amiibo since last year.
Yeah.
I don't think there has been a reason to.
Just Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I think that was
Just
it,
the update,
actually.
yeah.
That was it. I think I scanned the Zelda one once to see if it would have got, and it
You
was...
want to Ganon
When I
in
told
your
you
town.
if you-
that wolf will move into your town, your eyes lit up.
I'm
I've
very
never seen
happy
you
about that wolf
excited.
living in my town.
I scanned a few in Picross.
Oh, that's right. You can do that.
Oh, I did too. You're right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Good
That's
point.
cool.
So now we have more hardware or hardware shortages and hardware supply
Ooh, baby.
constraints. So first
Yeah,
big
it was
one.
hard to
first,
find the Wii U.
First big miss. It was
anyone's
not
Have you
Wii
Wii
checked
U.
Craigslist?
It was Pokemon Go Plus, which was initially delayed outside of when it was supposed to be announced, and that delay made it sound like we needed to get the software right, so that's
Yep.
not there. And by the way, Pokemon Go, for everything that it was great about it, was a sort of an on fire app when you got it, because it was barely like sort of holding together from not just users but from like construction and how it was made. But Pokemon Go Plus shortages were a problem. Then actually let's
Where's yours?
finish that point.
Where's yours?
It's in my pocket
Nice.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually
Alright.
have one on me.
You have
I still
yours
play
on
that
you
game.
now?
Yeah.
No, but I noticed Jose was wearing one yesterday. Yeah.
Plus, to me, was an example of mismanagement of the development schedule. Like, if that had come out on day one at a decent supply, and like, don't get me that you couldn't predict that lots of people would play Pokemon Go.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, this is the first Pokemon Go, Pokemon game on mobile. You knew that was going to
no one
get a
could
lot
you-
of
I mean,
people.
could you-
I was going to
No
say, could
one
you have
knew.
predicted
No,
that
of
it would be
course
that
not.
big a success?
No.
That was a runaway success.
It was a monster, but I would have pegged it to be as big as Super Mario Run or something like that. And like the fact that Plus was not there at launch it's got to be one of the biggest mistakes in Nintendo's hardware history.
But here it is. Even if it wasn't at launch, when you did release it in September,
weren't enough.
maybe have enough. And I think that's the thing that we're going to get into with the next piece of hardware that was announced. The NES Classic, which was, I mean, when was the last time a product like this got announced, whether it was Atari, Sega Genesis, what have you, that so many people on the internet lit up and went nuts over the idea of having that thing? That was the NES Classic Edition,
different.
and then that came out, and we find out that, jokingly 15 were made for the whole country.
What was the number that they ended up shipping?
It was like
something
190,000
or something.
So hold on, that came out, but before that, you couldn't pre-order it.
Nope.
You couldn't buy it
of the
anywhere. You
problem.
couldn't there was no anything for that.
And
I-
Pokemon Go Plus suffered from a similar pre-order. Where and when and how can I get it?
Yeah,
Sorry,
But
and
then
then
you got them pretty quickly. Like Go, with Plus,
there weren't that many though. It was
like
the same problem.
A couple of weeks in, I had no problem finding a couple for my family. I still can't get an NES Classic.
Yeah.
And it's been weeks, right?
I've had two.
Yeah.
We had a day here at IGN where Amazon announced that they were doing pre-orders, or you could actually buy it for the first time. It wasn't even pre-orders because I think it was out already. It just disappeared so fast.
It was the Friday or Saturday,
and we
Tuesday.
all went and refreshed the page. It was like 10 of us sitting in the office at the same time. The website crashed. Taiwanese spam bots bought them all or something insane like that, and then they was gone.
There's rarely been an event like that in the office where, it happens a lot where we're all watching the same thing or like say an E3 press conference or something, but never have I seen the office standing up and shouting across the room like, there might be 5 on Amazon, get over it on Amazon, look at Target.com. And
Next
none
time,
of us got
tell
one.
me.
None of
Don't
us got
tell
one.
the office.
You sit in the
I should have
office.
told you.
Sit right there.
Should have quietly whispered it.
I tried. There was a week where Walmart was doing them every day at 2 p.m.
Correct.
2 p.m. Missed it every single time, or didn't luck out. They were going for $250 on eBay, insane amounts of money. I randomly at like 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm always up early, and so is Andrew Goldfarb. I got a text from him, and he's like, NES Classics. He doesn't sleep. Yeah. He's like, they're on Amazon Prime right now, which is the service in select cities where they'll deliver to you in like 2 hours.
I got one for my sister that way. Did you
No,
get one?
so I got one.
Okay.
And I ended up bringing it home for Christmas and plugging in my TV and playing with my brothers who don't play video games. Yeah. And they completely reconnected with Nintendo. They stayed up all night like drinking and playing Punch-Out and playing Mario and Zelda. Yeah. And it's like that is what they need. Like that should have been everywhere. That should have been on every end cap and every Target and Walgreens and Walmart. And I think they missed it.
So here's what bugs me the most. The pre-order thing was definitely part of it. I completely agree that was an issue. I think what bothers me is that, let's say, in the hypothetical world Nintendo lives in, they had their order situation figured out before they basically fired off, hey, we're making this.
Oh, that
and
has
it's coming
to be the
out in
case.
September.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the case with a manufacturer. If you, based on your metrics, you thought this was enough, and then you hit fire on that press release, it went out, the entire internet lit up saying, we want one. And I don't think anyone at Nintendo said, change the order, increase the number. We need to now
get a
meet
second
this
round
demand
in,
and get more production out of this.
We don't know that though. They may have been at capacity, and like maybe they have, like they have certain suppliers like Foxconn, like where they manufacture these devices.
They're developing Switch,
and
which is another thing that they're trying to get out the door.
Yeah, and they're cranking out Switch components and all that. Remember, they gotta make machines and add-ons and everything, right? And they just couldn't raise the order. But like if it's a bad excuse. Like there is a way to get ahead of that, to find another manufacturer, to find another partner, and manufacture
and that's my
enough.
overall point.
And they didn't. You're absolutely right. They didn't move on that, and it was rarely is it this apparent. Like Tickle Me Elmo is like the great example of a toy that is so popular that people go nuts getting it for Christmas. NES Classic was approaching that, and it was very apparent.
Yeah. But it's interesting to me only because I've never seen excitement around a retro device like this. I've never. Yeah. I mean, have you? Has anyone here?
Tamagotchi, like the kind of like that was a very simple video game device that everybody wanted, right?
Yeah, and I say that only because I think it was easy to underestimate. But once you saw the reaction, that's when it was your time to act and try to make this happen.
Right. This is going to anger a lot of people probably, but I think that in an age when Nintendo is looking for their footing with gamers again, that planned scarcity in small amounts is probably not a bad idea. Like all press is good press, and the idea that gaming websites are plastering headlines that say like nobody can find a Super or an NES Classic, it's sold out everywhere because it's so great. I mean, that's not a bad idea. It's not bad press to have.
It's a good idea when you sold 2 million units.
Yes, but I was about to say.
But you sold over 100,000, and that thing would have gone over a million easily.
But
right?
Here's the thing: like the sort of what's getting passed around as common knowledge that people will then lose interest and not buy this thing, I think is complete like manure. Like, I'm sorry.
That didn't happen. Our very own CJ Gibson is still going to a store every morning to try and find it.
Everyone who was upset they couldn't find it is still going to every website. Maybe not every day, but in their off chance. We were doing this with Amiibo a year ago, where we were like, where can you get it? When can you get it? We were texting each other in the middle of the night trying to find some of this stuff. Regrettably, I feel silly now. Yeah. But at the time, that it's just like you still want to have it
because we learned from our mistakes.
We didn't. No.
Like, that's my thing. Like, 6 months later, they tweeted out, like, oh, we're going to make these easier to get.
No,
Supplies
but the
easier.
idea that people are, oh, well, I gave up. I'm not buying this. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I did until Goldfarb was like, here's this thing.
So
my friend made me a Raspberry Pi, and I'm like, well, that'll work.
So I think for us, for people who really love the nostalgia and want to kind of reclaim this piece from our childhood in mini form, when so we cute. Ourselves were mini, I think we're okay to go back in March and say like, oh, finally I can get this game. But I do think like the family angle is broken.
Right.
Like people who wanted it for kids because they heard this is the hot toy for Christmas may not buy it in January. But when that family walks in Target,
you can't tell me that there's not a chance they don't end up buying it when they find it. When they go, oh, there it is. Okay, we're gonna get
I'm
one
not saying
today.
that at all. But there is you can derail a product.
By the way,
like
I'm not saying this is right. I think this was a huge miss in 2016. This was one of the biggest things that was a way to reconnect with gamers. There was a way to expand that brand and sort of get people's attention again, and they missed it.
And there's one additional factor, and that's Nintendo has new hardware coming out in March. And the last thing it wants is for people to go into Target and go like, maybe I'll get the cheaper Nintendo. They don't want that. Like the fourth quarter of the year was the time to shine for the NES Classic, and it totally and utterly botched that launch.
And I will say this didn't actually, in my opinion, it didn't really sort of like revitalize. I mean, I've always had an adoration and excitement for Nintendo, but it didn't really revitalize that in the same way. What it reminded me of, and what it still instilled fear in me, is that in March when the Switch comes out, I won't be able to get one. Well, the experience with this was so difficult that I'm like, maybe between Amiibo and this, like they just don't know how to ship a product. I mean, I have to sit back.
It happened with the Wii. When the Wii launched. And I mean, we were already hearing reports that Nintendo is putting out statements saying like, hey, we don't
2
know.
million fiscal year.
Yeah, 2 million in the fiscal year. So that's
Wii was
not
a monster.
Global.
Wii was a monster, and like I don't.
Global?
Yeah, like
I thought
worldwide.
that was just in the States.
No,
no.
That is worldwide 2 million.
That's not great.
Wii U's, for example, not hard to get, right?
No, but also, and we've talked about this before, it depends on when, and we're going to get to that later in the show, like when will this thing get launched, but we can't end the hardware discussion without talking about the most important, the elephant that was in the room the entire year finally came forward, which was
the Nintendo
Codename
2DS.
is now called Nintendo Switch. And that was a big moment for them, one that we're going to be talking about for a while for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, because it generated a ton of excitement. I mean, I think to date, 21 million views on YouTube just on the North American trailer alone.
See, that's the thing that
2 million systems worldwide.
That's the thing that I still love about Nintendo is that they're sort of like the Radiohead of the games industry. You know, they don't have to tell people what they're working on. They don't have to tell people when they're going to hear about it. They can contact the entire games press the day before and say, by the way, that system that you've been asking about for a year and a half, we're going to show you tomorrow. Yeah. And it's like, well, okay.
And it's hard as hell to get tickets unless you go on Craigslist.
But it's nostalgia, right? It's like with Marvel, if Marvel has a bad movie, like let's say somebody makes a bad Spider-Man movie, the next movie,
hypothetically,
let's say hypothetically, but then the next movie can still clean up, right? Like these franchises that Nintendo has published over the years, we love them, and even when there's a bad Metroid game for the 3DS, we're all going to be back for the next one. And with Switch, I mean, they came out, the reveal trailer was really well done. The system in it looked good. They had a couple of like nuggets of, oh my God, is that a new Mario game? Right? Like, hey, Zelda is going to run on the small screen. That's pretty freaking cool.
Is that
like
Skyrim?
I thought they played this exactly right. I liked the way they did it.
We called it.
Jose actually predicted it. He said they're going to do something smaller in December, and then they're going to follow up with like bigger details next year. And like that's exactly what they're doing. And I think it worked wonderfully well.
Yeah, no. My only problem with it is that the gap between when they showed it and when they finally have something to say about it, I think could undo some of that goodwill, especially if the things they have to say are not great. Now, we can't call that because obviously it's next week when we're going to talk about that later. But I hope that in getting that one part of your message right, the follow through is going to be equally as strong. You're going to answer all the questions, and people are going to leave saying, yes, this is a cool thing, or this is a dud, it's one or the other. There's no in between with this thing. Like, that's just it.
So I think never underestimate the factor of seeing something on a small display, right? You put something on a giant screen, it's going to get blurrier and blown out. You put something on a tight little display, it's going to look good. And I think that's going to be the message from journalists and people who get to try this thing finally. They're like, oh, it looked really cool on the screen. But when I held it, it felt like a really high quality device, like something something you'd expect from Apple. Mark my words, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then everybody says, you know how great Zelda looks on that screen.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be the takeaway, and I think it's going to create a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
And then we don't know what games will be there, right? Like if we get to play a Mario game and everybody's going to be enamored with it. Like, I mean, even if take Galaxy 1, put it on a small screen like that, it's going to look like $1 million bucks.
If Jose goes to New York next week and gets to play a brand new 3D Mario game, and I'm not there, I'm going to be very, very angry.
That's a warning.
I'm going to be very angry.
If you don't hear from me the week after that event, know that Zach hid the body.
Yeah. Welcome to NBC. I'm your host.
All right, so I'm ready to move forward to mobile. If you guys are, is there anything left to sort of go with there?
Mobile, like the Nintendo Switch.
Right. So let's talk about Nintendo Mobile, because this was the first year that we saw what Nintendo set up the year before in terms of the deal with DNA, and we're making mobile games. We're going to put out smartphone product. And coincidentally, Pokemon Company said, me too, because they had a little app that won't stop printing money in 2016. But it kicked off with Miitomo. So first of all, before I even kick off with what it was about, this all felt like, and you and I were talking about this at lunch the other day, experiments. Each game had its own experiment.
Yep.
Miitomo, it's not a game, but free to play, social network that was polished, charming. Unfortunately, not the most interesting social network in the world.
It didn't last,
or an interesting hook to it that made you want to keep coming back, but still something that, okay, here's a free-to-play thing. Here is like $80 microtransactions embedded in there that you can find if you're a whale and you want to go for that stuff. We're not going to stop you. Then in July, you saw Pokemon Go, which wasn't part of Nintendo's smartphone plan, which used to be 5 games, which completely took the world by storm with zero marketing dollars pretty much behind it. Like, or not a ton of marketing money
they
behind
spent some money, but
They spent some, but they didn't spend that much.
That commercial didn't come cheap.
Yeah, but or the Super Bowl airtime didn't come cheap. But if you look at, Nintendo's last quarter financials, $115 million was made.
That was Nintendo's cut.
Yeah, that was
Nintendo's
cut.
Pokemon Company,
Yeah, sorry,
right?
we just had a moment there. I'm getting the Super Mario Run, but then we had Mario Run, a $10 quality top Nintendo IP that cost more than anything they put out or most things on the App Store, but had the biggest marketing push from Apple I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Which I had a few problems with this game, the always online stuff, the sort of lack of levels. This game went on to be my favorite mobile game ever made. I have probably put 17 hours into this game. I don't know what happened. It just kind of clicked at some point.
I love Super Mario Run.
Me too.
Like,
Me too.
I really, and I'm not a guy, I don't play mobile games. I've spent $20 on Final Fantasy 9 on mobile, thinking like this will be the game that gets me to really take gaming seriously on mobile, and just it never sticks. And I've played like not necessarily 17 hours, but I've played a ton of Mario Run, and it is so great.
Yeah, I'm going for every coin. I'm playing Toad Rally to unlock all the stuff in the Mushroom Kingdom that I don't need, because there's that sort of collectible aspect to it. I think I have like almost 8,000 coins in Toad Rally. Like, it's insane.
That's really scary.
I thought that the connectivity between that and my Nintendo was pretty smart. Just like getting little unlocks and stuff. Something interesting happened about this game. I went to play New Super Mario Brothers 2 the other day on my 3DS because I had it and I was flying, and Super Mario Run doesn't work on airplanes.
Sure.
Unless you pay for the Wi-Fi. Yeah, which is not a good thing to do.
That game has a mode called Coin Rush, which is very similar to Toad Rally. And I went to play it, and I was like, this is really slow, and Mario doesn't climb up on the ledges like
automatically.
He should, and it's just not as fast as I want it to be. And I was like, did Mario Run break 2D Mario for me? Like, what? That's that's going to be a big problem. If I go to play the next 2D Mario game and I'm like, this doesn't feel as good as Mario Run, then I think they did something special here, and also a little crazy. But I'm hooked on this game. I love it. I think the price tag's a problem for people because you're not going to see the same sort of longevity that you do on other mobile games. Like Clash of King, all those games, they make $1 million a day, right?
Oh, Clash of Clan Kingdoms?
Clash of Clan Kingdoms. But this game, it's a $10 buy, and that's it.
I'm sorry. I don't know how to recover from that.
There's no other way to give this game money.
Clash Royale is one of my favorite mobile games this year, and I agree with you. Like, in terms of my experience with mobile is similar to yours. I always have high hopes for mobile, but I rarely find games that hold me for very long. I was very surprised and then smitten by how Mario Run kind of was able to occupy a lot of my time. I do think the always online thing was a mistake. I still feel like it was definitely something that needs to get patched out or changed over time. Just like you're going to see that $10 eventually come down. I don't think Nintendo's going to approach mobile and say it's $10 for life. Maybe when Mario Switch comes out, it goes down to $6. Maybe it goes down to $7 or something like that.
See, I play a lot of mobile games actually, and you know, I did really like Super Mario Run. I thought it was really well done, and I feel like this is a great franchise that coexists with classic Mario. And it does feel, it's stressful, man. Like when you miss a coin, you don't get the same kind of chance to go back. Obviously, you can do the bubble, but you don't get that same chance to go back and do it perfectly like in the classic game. So it is a very different experience. But I found that also, I found myself going back to other mobile games and playing them instead of Mario Run, because sometimes I don't want that like full attention rush. I want something that's a little bit more relaxing, a little bit more casual. And like, even though Nintendo tried to highlight that casualness with the one-handed play, it is a pretty damn intense game, and it's difficult if you want to get all the coins.
This is the hardest Mario game ever made. It's kind of quiet because you can finish it in an hour, and you're like, oh, I beat the game. No, you didn't. Like, if you go back and you get the extra coins. Also, Toad Rally, like, it adds something that I've never really seen from this franchise before, which is racing against people online all over the world. Like, I'll see somebody with more toads than me, and I'm like, I got to take that guy down. Having ghost races in a 2D Mario game is brilliant, and I think there's a lot of great ideas here that I hope they bring into their next.
Does it send you notifications?
No.
So I just want to highlight that.
I don't let anything send me notifications.
But when Nintendo launched on mobile, I feel like almost like, DNA knows their stuff, and they probably said, hey, here's what you got to do on mobile. And I feel like Nintendo was a little bit like, they didn't fully embrace the platform to say a $10 model is going to piss off a lot of people. The way it's done, right? Like, I'm a father of 3 kids. When I buy a mobile game, everybody gets to play it on their own phones because there's family sharing.
Sure.
Not with this game, because it's an unlock that you have to pay inside the game, right? You have that. So you have that high price point. You have a weird notification structure that could be the most addictive thing ever. If like a week after you played the first 4 levels, it said, now 4 new levels available. And like, sure, they could be $1 or whatever, but like, just to get the audience to come back. And then finally the always on, like the need to be connected for no other reasons but DRM.
Sure.
I feel like those are 3 big mistakes that I think after this game they're going to learn from it. They're not going to replicate it for Fire Emblem or Animal Crossing.
No, definitely. And I think that's part of all the lessons that needed to be learned. And I do think, I think one thing that I would like to see them do with this game to maybe round out mobile is, right now the conversation is $10 is too much. The free version is not enough.
I totally got my money back on that one.
I don't think it's too much. I think $10 at once, the way they played it is wrong.
I think that
content is there. It's a good game.
The craziest thing about this game to me is we knew we were going to get a Mario Endless Runner. I don't think what I anticipated anyway was that how much like Mario it would feel like. And so for me, $10 for a full brand new Mario game, like, I'm more than willing to.
Especially one I have in my pocket everywhere. Like, I think that like there's people are going to have a lot of problems with this game, and they already do. And investors and business people are going to be looking at it for years. What went right, what went wrong. This game has nailed platforming on a touchscreen like no iOS or Android game ever has before. And you do it vertically, and you do it with one hand.
I think that's debatable. I mean, there's Jetpack Joyride, there was Rayman.
Jetpack Joyride's not a platformer, though.
It's not.
It's a fly former.
But it definitely nailed the feel of a good jump. I think there was also what was the first big hit on iOS? Cannonbolt is one of my favorite like endless runner ideas. But I hear what you're saying. Like,
and I love Rayman Run, but I'll be completely honest. Like, that game about halfway through starts introducing sort of like 2 or 3 button mechanics, like punching and spinning and stuff like that, and it starts to get difficult and starts to lose its way. This game is completely focused in its control.
I agree with you. I think it's really good stuff.
But I don't think Mario Run's done. I don't think that I think 2017 is going to surprise people, because you're going to get, first of all, you're getting your Android bump when that thing comes out on Android. It's already shown up on the shop as you can get a notification for this. But I wonder if internally at Nintendo there is the conversation of, we made this big deal out of $10, one price, you don't have to pay any more. why not throw some extra levels at it?
Yeah.
Why not try and generate that buzz again?
Absolutely.
I would buy
Maybe
them in a
not
heartbeat.
sell them. Maybe just put them out for free. What if they gave you an extra world and we're like, hey, this is part of a,
Honestly, that
here's a push and a
seems more
promotion.
in line. That seems more in line with their messaging to just show up one day and say, guess what? Here's 4 more levels.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, people who
an
paid get
additional
them
world.
first. I mean, there are lots of different models they can take, but you can see it in the ratings, right? Like a lot of people are giving this game 1-star reviews, and it's for a quality experience. Like you can't play this game and say it's not a quality experience.
Yeah.
For a quality experience, the rating it's got in the App Store is really low, and that's because the reviews are 1-star, saying I can't believe this is $10, right? Whereas like people who played these games on handhelds and consoles go in and say this is great, is good value for $10.
Sure.
People who play mobile games say it's not.
Yeah,
And so
sure.
you gotta as a company like Nintendo, you gotta appreciate that, and you gotta know the platform. We know why they did it, right? They don't want to devalue the Mario brand and say you can get a $1 Mario game. Like that's not in their best interest. But still, you gotta play it to the platform in the right way.
Sure.
So, Per, I wanted to ask you, are your kids interested in Mario Run?
My daughter liked it for a while, but not that much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But they also live in a house where they can play
Sure.
everything, and the boys are more into Steam and PC games than
Yeah, I
mobile,
gotta
but-
check in on my nephew because I got it for him when I was visiting for Christmas. See if he's still with it. And I bought it for my sister too.
How does your niece like it?
She's a non gamer. My sister 100% of the way. Like we grew up playing games together, but she definitely doesn't. I think keep up with it as much. I'm gonna check in and see if she enjoyed it or not, just to see where she's gone with that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, family sharing definitely stands in the way, I think, of a lot of siblings playing the game.
Yeah.
Because there's no alternate accounts either. It's, so.
All right.
One quick thing before
sure.
before we move on from Super Mario Run was one of my favorite moments all year. 2016 at IGN was Jose coming over to me to show me Super Mario Run on that giant iPad.
Oh, the iPad Pro?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
He came over and he's like, "Look at this thing," and he's holding it like
Finally a phone for my size.
It was so funny.
That was a really good. I was trying to get something done with that, but we ended up not taking off. I feel like we didn't say enough about Pokemon Go, but I feel like the year was so full of talking about Pokemon Go that maybe we don't have to spend a ton of time here.
I think just real quick, I think that phenomenon is something that's sort of bandied about in our industry. Like a lot of people use that term to describe when things are a hit. This is a legitimate phenomenon to me. Like when
it's going to be remembered,
absolutely.
Yeah.
People that I know that have never played a video game or haven't played a video game in 20 years since maybe the last time they played the original Pokemon, spent hours and hours wandering the city trying to find
and hanging out with hardcore Pokemon players too. Like to bring those two worlds together is a triumph.
Boy,
you know?
and
I will
meeting
say-
people on the street just randomly playing this game is something I've never experienced.
Do you think they can
playing
bring that
anything
back
again?
Do you think it's a
I don't know.
phenomenon that happens once?
Because
or
I
do you
feel like a
think
lot of
it's
the people
done
that were
again?
I feel like a lot of the people that were on that phenomenon, like that were so into it, fell off of it just as quickly. And it's one of those things that it's like, well, I spent my time with it. I caught 103 unique Pokemon, and I don't really need to go back to that. So then that means that Pokemon Go 2, I don't know that there's an appeal for that to those.
See, but I do think it depends. And I do think that this game has quietly gotten updates that have, first of all, made it way more stable. Because when it came out, I
it
was
was a
logging
mess.
into my Google account and getting 2-step notification freaking text messages more than any time ever. But in October, Thanksgiving, and the holidays, there were 3 different very specific promotions that they went for, plus new Pokemon, especially in December, that I feel is just them testing the waters, getting that audience back. Andrew, who has moved on, Andrew Goldfarb, our news editor, who moved on from this game, said, I'm done. I caught all the ones that could be caught, and that's all I wanted to do. The minute Togepi and those Pokemon showed up, right back in again. And I think there are a lot more people like him. Yeah, he's not alone.
No,
Look in the
he's
App
very
Store.
alone.
Look in the App Store rankings. That game is right at the top. It is one of the most highly played games.
Yep.
I think it's going to have legs. Like, yes, the original kind of early adopter audience, like the Pokemon hardcore fans, have moved on. But just like with a game like Candy Crush, where like 6 months later, you still find somebody who goes like, this is great. I haven't heard of this before.
Yeah.
You will get that with Pokemon.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm hiding the answer, although I think Per knows it. But let's talk about Nintendo Direct. Let's transition. So Nintendo Direct in 2015 was a slightly different beast. And I want to set the rules here. I'm talking about Nintendo Direct. I'm not talking about your E3 live show and we haven't even talked about E3 and Zelda yet, which we'll get to, obviously. But actually, you're not allowed to answer. How many Nintendo Directs happened in 2015? I'm talking about straight Directs, not franchise specific.
Six.
Okay, in 2016, put your hand down.
Oh, yeah, 6.
You think 6? What do you think?
22.
That's a lie.
No, I don't know.
the Price is Right thing, or like you get above?
I
No,
thought Per was doing one of these. No, realistically, I would say 12.
There were only 2.
What? Are you kidding?
March 3rd, 2016. So here's
a month, you know.
Here's the list of directs, and I'm only talking about Nintendo Direct, like classic Nintendo Direct. There were only 2. There was March 3rd, and then there was where to go? I thought September 1st, the Nintendo 3DS one. Outside of that, we had a Pokemon Direct, which was really just an announcement for Sun and Moon, but it still count. It's the franchise specific ones I don't count because they drill down to one franchise, and therefore they're not this big, wide sweeping update
like
kind of deal.
Nintendo brand building bigger events. Yeah.
Japan had more than us. Japan had obviously the Pokemon Direct. They had we had an Animal Crossing Direct, same as them. So those are the 2 franchise specific ones. But then there was a Coltsep Revolution Direct for Japan only. There was a Monster Hunter Direct for Monster Hunter Stories in Japan, which was a huge deal in October. And then or next Monster Hunter, I'm not even sure what was talked about that thing. And then Miitopia, which was this sort of holiday game they put out in Japan that's not out here yet, but it looks wacky, zany, and cool, and will probably come out on 3DS next year. Guess how many were held in 2015? You don't know the answer to this, so you can jump in.
In 2015?
In 2015, the year before, how many Nintendo Directs were there?
12?
10.
6.
I don't 12. Let's go one a month.
4. There were 4 in 2015.
That's not that.
So it wasn't as many. It wasn't a huge drop off. Just wanted to put that out. There were more franchise specific ones. Like last year, we had several Smash Directs, I believe.
Yeah, for sure.
On top of other stuff, because every time the DLC train came along, you got another Direct for Smash. Yeah. I just wanted you guys to know that. And it's 5 if you count the Nintendo Direct Micro they had right before E3, where they announced a bunch of smaller games.
Gotcha.
I just thought it was fun trivia, but also illustrative of this entire, like, this was a weird year in terms of message and in terms of talking out loud, because every time they open their mouths, people are like, talk about an X. And they'd be like, we're not talking about an X. We're going to focus on product, whatever.
Well, there really wasn't enough product. I did wish that Nintendo had kind of embraced Pokemon Go more as kind of like a Nintendo event as well, and not like made it a completely separate thing, because the audience doesn't know. People don't care that Nintendo is not the publisher of Pokemon Go.
Japanese run business cares.
And so it to me, like, I think they could have celebrated these releases a little bit more. And then let's not forget that Nintendo still, I think was struggling in 2016 with finding a voice for Directs after the passing of Mr. Iwata, who really kind of embodied and was the voice of these events. I think that took a lot of wind out of their sails in trying to do this.
Well, and that's why it took so long to lead into March. Yeah. No, that is 100% true. Like, it feels like we had not heard from them afterwards in that format for a significant amount of time. I guess that's something I didn't think about.
I mean, we need more. I feel like we need more of that stuff. And the NES Classic was an example of how willing and ready people are to celebrate Nintendo's legacy. Yeah.
But what they did do with the final one was set the table for 2017. And so far for them, it is that Nintendo 3DS doesn't go away. You've got a Pikmin 3DS game. You've got a Mario sports title. You've got, you mentioned earlier, the Poochie and Yoshi Woolly World combo. And you've got Ever Oasis.
I like that title.
Which is, that's what we should call it. And you got Ever Oasis, which is like this new RPG they're trying out as in terms of an IP.
But let's hope that that's not it, because what you're citing right now, to me, sounds like the final year of the Wii U, where it's like Pikmin is not a top tier franchise. I love those games, by the way. I love the Pikmin games.
They're
all
good
3.
Critically, they're not great commercially.
Yeah, but and this lineup right now sounds like the last year of the Wii U, where you do get a Paper Mario game, but you don't get a Mario game, right? And
I don't think
let's hope that they're going into E3 and that there is more of a reason for the 3DS to stick around and it hasn't been supplanted by the Switch.
Sure. Well, and I hope one of those things is Miitopia, because you guys should look it up if you haven't on YouTube. Just check it out. It's this weird sort of zany me-focused RPG, but you're pulling in your friends and you're giving them different classes.
That's really cool.
It's what Find Me wants to be but isn't, if that's the way to describe it. Like, definitely check that out
to make it more personal, like to make the characters feel more personal.
And there's a big emphasis on just like cinematic and like really cool qualities. I think it's zany and weird. I love it. All right, so then in 2016, the one thing you did see a lot of was Nintendo sort of making more attempts to expand the brand, to reconnect with people. You saw Vans cross Nintendo, which I ended up buying a ton of shoes. I think I was the only one though here at this table. Why are you laughing at me?
I bought some socks.
Did you guys care?
Okay. I'm wearing my Donkey Kong socks right now.
There
I bought some socks
Ooh.
for sure. Their shoes were like kind of all over the place for me, and then by the time I kind of like got off the fence and wanted to buy them, they were sold out everywhere.
Yeah. I wanted it. Yeah, I couldn't get the pair.
That's what happens with like the Vans Cross Anything run. It's usually limited run.
What's
and
really funny is like
it's very Nintendo.
Yeah, they were extremely limited. They were extremely hard to find, and I remember seeing them for very expensive when they first launched. But I went in to buy some new shoes at the Vans store here downtown just the other day, and I saw the NES high tops, and it took me a second. I was like, do I want those NES high tops still?
I did the same thing.
Jose has those. I don't want to do it. I know what happened. No, I bought a bunch of them. I think I bought like 4 pairs, and I'm not someone who ends up buying a lot of shoes. The only thing is they don't match with everything, but the occasional outfit works for me. Universal and Nintendo got a little closer and announced Super Nintendo World as part of this year's sort of rollout of announcements. And they even announced that, hey, this is not just Universal Studios Tokyo. This is going to be Hollywood, Florida. Like there's all their locations. I don't know them off the top of my head. I should have written them down, and I clearly did not. But that is an exciting thing. There's a Nintendo theme park coming. But you have to wonder, what are the repercussions of partnering with Universal? Like, I almost wonder, does that eliminate for them working with a competitor? Like, would Disney not want to do something with Nintendo now because Nintendo went with Universal? I don't think anyone's thinking. Like, I also wonder if Universal is going to be the company that picks up their films. Yeah. Because people want video game films. Like, that's the thing. Even though they fail every time.
That's an interesting note. Look, I mean, I expect on the film side, I've expected for a long time there to be a Netflix animated series announcement, right? They have that Troll Hunter show and stuff. Like I was expecting something like that set in the Mushroom Kingdom or based on Zelda or something. We haven't heard anything, but this is really interesting whether it's going to go into the Universal camp now, because they have forged this.
You have a stake with that company, right? Yeah. I don't think that
it's
bodes
coming.
well.
It's coming. Something is coming with films and TV.
Well, not everyone's an enemy, right? Because on the flip side, Detective Pikachu is getting a movie that got announced this year, and Legendary Pictures picked that up. That's this weird oddity because the game's not out yet,
right?
But the movie got announced, and a lot of people in the office care, especially because Pikachu's the mascot.
Starring Danny DeVito.
Hopefully. Go get that change.org petition signed. Get that going. But you had also the brand play of NES Classic, which we talked about, and Miyamoto on stage at Apple to announce a video game. I mean, that was huge.
And Miyamoto on stage, and not on stage, but in the crowd at Jimmy Fallon.
Or even Nintendo on Jimmy Fallon again, showing Run and then using the opportunity to talk about Switch. But we haven't talked about E3, which was probably going into it. I've never seen us probably more frustrated and sort of just puzzled because it was E3? Well, we got the announcement that only Zelda Breath of the Wild, Zelda Breath of the Wild would be the only playable game at the show.
That game that won our game of the show at E3, right?
Right.
No one could have called that. Like no one could have called that.
They would only
Well, that not only that would be the only game, but that it would still win game of show because it was that good.
If you played it, you know why.
I was like frustrated at first, and then I was kind of relieved and just kind of like went, okay, well, this is gonna be a Zelda show for them. I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, and especially when we started hearing things about how they were building their booth to look like Zelda and things like that.
Yeah, this man called Zelda Disneyland. Raise your hand.
Yeah.
That's fire alarm.
That's our fire alarm.
Fire.
You gotta be kidding me. Welcome back. Apparently, someone on the Beyond team pulled the fire alarm.
That's not
Thank
true.
you very much.
That's heresy.
It's absolutely true.
You're starting inter-podcast feuds, and I'm not.
I'm Jose Otero, and it is too hot in the studio. But we were talking about Nintendo sort of expanding the brand and how looking at it holistically. Outside of, we said Vans Cross Nintendo, Universal and Nintendo, the Super Nintendo World project getting announced, Detective Pikachu getting a movie that's not out yet but announced, NES Classic Edition was a brand play, Miyamoto on the Apple stage was a brand play, Miyamoto at the whole Reggie. Fallon and Reggie and Miyamoto at Fallon was a brand play. How did those things work out outside of obviously the missteps in the Classic Edition's specific scarcity?
I think they were great. They're great. It's I've had to watch, I don't know, 30 iPhone or iOS or Apple press conferences since I started working here, and they're always the same. It's like a British guy comes out and mumbles about how things are changing, but they need to be better and whatever that. This was just like all of a sudden this magical, wondrous toy maker gets on screen and picked up the mood for everything.
They need more like that. I mean, remember also Mario and the Olympic Games, right?
Oh,
in the
I
Olympic
forgot
Games,
about
you've got that little moment too. That stuff, like Nintendo is. It's so Japanese, right? Like it's so meaningful to people in the games business around the world, and like they're the ones who brought back gaming after the Atari days, and you know, like they have so much worth celebrating. It's awesome that they're laying the foundation for big things to come, because like this was just the announcement of the Universal Studios stuff. Like the next couple of years, we'll see their brand really come to the forefront off the screen.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. We need more of them. We need, like, definitely, it was something that the people who are still Nintendo fans, who it's a smaller audience, it feels every year, we're super happy about it. And you were going to say.
I love the idea that they're rolling Miyamoto-san out in front of a wider audience. Like, I love that he was at Fallon. I love that he was on stage at Apple. I feel like to us, it's a huge name, but to the world at large, they don't, like a lot of people don't know couldn't tell you who created Mario or Zelda or Donkey Kong, and it's all the same guy. And I think that A, him getting that recognition, and B, him getting public face time, especially after losing Iwata-san, like it's huge for Nintendo.
It's awesome. Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. And it's like you look at some of the most iconic characters of all time, and sadly, a lot of the people behind or responsible for their creation have passed away. And you have someone like Miyamoto, and if he can come out on stage and they're like, "That's the creator of Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong," and he does that thumbs down, thumbs up thing, it's huge. You know, it's so cool. Like, I'll never get to meet Walt Disney, unless he's frozen somewhere. But Miyamoto gets to go on stage at Jimmy Fallon, and you're like, that's the guy that made Mario?
Yeah. I made a screen grab of Miyamoto giving Fallon the thumbs up.
It's so good.
I made it my desktop image.
Oh, really?
I often forget about it, and I'll minimize my windows, and there he is. Like,
it's impossible to have a bad day when you have that sitting there.
Yeah, and you had E3 2016, which we never would have guessed, Zelda Breath of the Wild, not just going all in on Zelda, and it being the sort of, this is it, we're putting our bets on this one, and it coming out Game of Show winner, and it coming out where everyone had a different story to tell about their experience playing it. That's what caught my eye, and what completely, like, Zelda Disneyland aside, because that even in itself was a reminder that they can do spectacle in
their
a cool
E3
way.
Booth. Yeah,
their E3 booth was absolutely a reminder.
That said to me, like, oh, you guys are going to make a theme park. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be awesome. Because like I grew up in New Jersey. I went to Six Flags Great Adventure.
Same.
That's a sad ass theme park.
Hey.
Like, you go to come on.
It's okay.
No,
the rides are great.
The rides are great, but the fanfare is not, right?
It's
and then you go to like Disney World, you go to like Splash Mountain or something like that, and you're like, okay, these guys have like
turn around.
Yeah, just waiting for the ride. There's
Yeah.
animatronics and everything, and like Nintendo had that. They had that big sizzling pot that Link cooks, where all the meat jumps in the air.
Around. Yeah.
You know, they had pressure sensitive pads you could step on that played music and did things. Like,
I think that we got the word that their booth would be Zelda themed as well, and I think we all kind of had the same thought that it would be a typical Nintendo booth with like Zelda banners and things like that. And I was on the show floor 2 days before the show floor opened, and they were carting in these giant boulders and these arcs and like all this crazy stuff, and we just so happened to be walking past an open door in the booth, and I peeked in, and when I saw that they had built a cathedral and they had trees, it blew me away.
It was amazing.
I remember I immediately texted Jose and was like, "Wait until you see this booth, dude."
Yeah. And again, awesome. Like, Per, good job on you for calling that, because when we first heard Breath of the Wild would be the only game, we all, I mean, obviously the reaction was negative, but the reminder from you was, it's going to be Zelda Disneyland, watch and wait. And then it ended up happening.
That's because I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I want to live in Hyrule.
It was awesome. Yeah.
San Francisco's all foggy.
Yeah. All right, so for the last 5 minutes of our show, we can't end a 2016 discussion, which, regardless of, we've said this was an off year and not a great year, I think we still found there were some good things to it. But next year, it's all about next year. We're in 2017. The Switch event is next week, the big live stream where Japan is going to walk us through the system, the launch lineup, the price, the date. We're going to go around. We're going to play a little game with this. All right. So in this game, you must name the price, you must name the release date, and you must name one thing that you haven't seen that you want from Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
But the caveat is, and we've already assigned a turn order, you are not allowed to use the same price or date as the person who spoke before you. You've got to, I just don't want us all sitting here nodding and saying $2.99. It's all, like, I want us to have a little more fun with this. Because we're probably all going to say that. So, Per, you're going to kick it off. You're going to give a price, you're going to give a release date, and you're going to give us one thing you haven't seen yet that you want. It could be a game, it could be a feature, anything.
So I will say, price, I will say $299. I'm going to stake my point in that one. So you guys can't use that one anymore. Can't use $29.99 either, because that's the one I want. And then for launch date, I'm going to say, I think Nintendo's going to launch on a Saturday this time, and that would be March 19th.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Because they want everybody to not have to line up on a work day, and they don't want you to buy it on a Sunday and then have to think about work and school the next day.
March 19th. You sure about that? March 19th is a Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
Oh, Sunday,
You mean
Saturday.
the 18th.
So then I will say March 18th, Saturday. Sunday is the easy pick because they've done Sunday so many times. March 18th is my day.
Don't shoot down someone else's pick.
And then the thing I want, I'm going to take something. I'm playing strategically. I'm going to block Brian from his, which is day one virtual console. All your purchases roll over.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
All your 3DS and Wii U
With no
virtual
fee.
console
With
games
no fee.
will roll over, be yours in your library.
You didn't say
ready
with
to
no
play.
fee.
For just
No fee,
$1.99
free.
each.
No,
No
free.
fee.
Okay,
We'll
I
roll
love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whose turn?
So my turn is next. And the way this was decided was we basically drew straws before this. So I will say March 24th it comes out. And now with the price, I've got to go higher or lower than Pear. I am going to say lower.
Whoa.
I'm going to say
No way,
it is
Jose.
$249.99.
That puts us in a tight spot.
Yeah,
price-wise.
it really
Yeah,
does.
what are we supposed to do? That was my pick.
You can do
too
270
late. And I'm gonna say that the one feature,
$249.95.
the one feature I haven't seen that I want from Nintendo Switch is a better online experience. Overall, I feel like with Wii U, a friends list that doesn't have interactivity is not, it's just a list. Like there was awareness to that your friends were playing, but there was no way to really reach out and say, hey, play this game with me. And that's
like
what my
with a share
that's what my social experience on PS4 is. I jump online, I see who's playing, and I go, oh, Sean's on, let me go play a game with him. And then I'll jump on, we jump on a voice chat. And even if we're on separate games, we're having a conversation and I'm having a good time. And that doesn't exist in Nintendo's platforms. I need that has to change with the next thing.
Yeah.
That's something people want. Zach, you are next.
I'm up next. I'm actually going to say March 31st. Friday, March 31st.
Last possible day.
That's the
right.
last possible day of fiscal year.
They'll make it the top seller of
I
March.
think they'll need it. And I'll say price point wise, I'll say $349. I'll go high.
Okay.
Yeah,
Does it have a pack-in at that point? At that price?
it must. Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing that I really want to see for Switch right out of the gate, especially, is like some really great first-party peripherals. Like I'd love to see, like Sony has a really great set of proprietary headphones that I'd love. Given portability and the rumored battery life, like I'd love to see a battery extension that either like clips onto the back of the Switch and plugs in or something like that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ryan.
All right. Release date, March 26th, because it's my birthday. And I want a Nintendo Switch for my birthday.
Really? That's awesome. Very cool.
And it's a Sunday, and I think that's a good time. You wake up on a Sunday morning, go get a new Nintendo console. I'm gonna go with $199.99 for a very bare bones version
man
of
is
that
dreaming.
thing. Yeah. It's also a 1080p system with the power that's just above a Wii U or somewhere between a Wii U and a PS4. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch. By this time next year, you'll be able to buy. Oh no, this time this year. What am I talking about?
Yeah,
what
it's all
year is
good.
it? In a few months, I think you'll be able to buy an Xbox One and a PS4 for under $200 with bundles and everything like that. So I think the Switch needs to be competitive. I think there'll be versions of it that scale upward. And lastly, the thing I want, I was playing the classic NES recently, and I immediately started up Zelda, and I put in my name as Zelda, and I played the second quest. And I was thinking, what if Breath of the Wild had a second quest? So you beat that entire game, you change your name, and all of a sudden, all of the items are in different places in the world. They have different features. The dungeons are in different places, and it's harder. So I would absolutely love a major
Quest.
3D Zelda game to have a Master Quest. Again.
I like that, and not just the what do they call it now? They call it heroic mode, I think, or
Hero
mode.
mode.
Yeah, I was thinking
Not
Halo.
just that, yeah.
but it's just the same game but harder. Like there aren't heart. Guess what? Hearts and rupees don't drop anyway, so that's not a feature anymore.
Yeah, I want remix level design. I want look at the way they did the Master Quest on Ocarina of Time if you want to see how a 3D Zelda can handle a second quest. So yeah, there it is.
That was an elaborate Master
like that
Quest.
one.
That one is completely remixed.
I know.
Yeah, like
that'd
it.
be really cool.
Well, here we are. That was our year in review show of Nintendo Voice Chat, and I'm wondering if I have to go wide or I have to go straight. I'm going to go wide.
There you go.
That's TV talk. Thank you for watching Nintendo Voice Chat. I'm Jose Otero. That's Brian Altano. That's Per Schneider, and this is Zach Ryan. And for all of us here, first of all, thanks for watching. There's going to be a lot more in 2017. Join us next week because we have a big Switch live stream coming up with a pre-show and a post-show. You can find every episode of Nintendo Voice Chat on YouTube, right? youtube.com/Nintendo Voice Chat. You can see every episode, easily searchable, find out every crazy thing we've said and every good thing we've said. And thanks for joining us.
Listen to some of our previous predictions, figure out what we got right.
Look forward to more 2017 right here in the studio and right here at IGN.
Get the thing.